standing in the lobby of Aulani, a Disney resort and spa. It's pretty incredible. We just experienced the luau. We've done water slides. We've had great meals, bad meals, cool service, fun times. It's been a blast. I'm here to tell you all about it, and you're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast.
Thanks so much for joining me here on episode 68 of the Tomorrow Society podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. This is a special podcast where I am going to talk all about my recent trip to Aulani, a Disney resort and spa. For my daughter's spring break, we made the flights from Missouri to Honolulu and spent 7 nights at Aulani, and it was incredible. It's a gorgeous resort, and I'm really happy that we decided to make this trip. And I'm basically going to go through each step. I'm going to try and give some tips along the way that I've learned in case you decide you would like to make the trip to Aulani, and also just talk about our experiences and how it connects to Disney. And if you're a fan of Walt Disney World and the parks, what's there for you at Aulani? I think there's more than there might seem to be on the surface. Talk about planning the trip, the actual flight, the rooms, so many activities that we did at Aulani, including the luau, and of course, the dining. What's better than getting to eat great food, hang out near the beach, and have perfect weather? I'm not sure much could compete with that. There's a lot to cover. That's why I'm going to split this podcast into 2 parts. It would be overwhelming if I tried to go through everything that we did within a single episode. It would either be really long, or I feel like I would have to rush it too much, and that's something I don't want to do. I also recorded some clips while I was at Aulani in various areas talking about specific elements of our trip. And the reason I did that is I wanted to have fresh thoughts, where basically, what was I thinking about the trip when I was there? A few weeks have passed by now since I was at Aulani, and while most of it is fresh in my brain, we have a ton of photos, lots of things going along with it, it can change. So I wanted to have some on-the-ground thoughts from our time during our trip in mid-March. I'm also going to have an interview with my daughter, Elise, and part of it is I just want to find out what it's like for a 9-year-old to go to Aulani. And also, she spent a little bit of time at Annie's Beach House, which is the kids club there. So I wanted to hear her thoughts on how that experience went. So that'll be near the end of this podcast. It was totally a blast to get a chance to go on a completely different type of trip. I am more of a parks guy. I like to go to Disney World and Disneyland and other parks, ride a ton of attractions, have immersive experiences. I don't usually go on vacations where we go and we just sit by the pool or sit at the beach. So this was different, and that's a good thing. And I think it could be attractive, if the price is right, for a lot of Disney fans who still want to have a connection to the characters and everything else, but maybe you're looking for a different type of trip. Similar to Disney Cruise Line, but you don't have to deal with seasickness or a giant boat or all the other logistics with that. Before I dive into all my thoughts on Aulani, I wanted to thank my new members of the Tomorrow Society from the past few months: Brent, Christopher, Jerry, Justin, Peggy, and Jess. Thanks to all of you for becoming official members and helping to support the Tomorrow Society. This is a listener-supported podcast, so if you like what I'm doing here and would love to pledge $1 or $2 per episode, it makes a huge difference in keeping this show going. To learn more, you can go to patreon.com/tomorrowsociety. That's patreon.com/tomorrowsociety. All right, well, let's talk about Aulani. So let's talk about the main components to book a trip to Aulani. And actually, at first, with my wife and I, we weren't even sure we were going to go to Aulani. It seemed too expensive, too luxurious for me. We've never been on a Disney cruise. We've stayed at deluxe resorts, but typically at the Animal Kingdom Lodge. We're not getting a 3-bedroom villa at the Grand Floridian or something. So I hadn't considered it that closely, but then we started considering going to Hawaii as I priced out other resorts and found they were cheaper, but not that much cheaper for what we were looking for. They also had extra resort fees, which that is one thing I will say about Aulani, is they do not have a daily resort fee, which can really change your daily price if you're not careful. It's all roped together into the nightly room fee, which can be very hefty. Also, there didn't seem to be any rooms available, really. I checked a few different times and then saw all of a sudden there was more openings. We were going during a very busy time. The middle of March is a popular time for spring break, so we knew it was not going to be easy to book a room. Originally, we were thinking that we would do a deluxe studio, mainly due to the price point. It seemed like that would be enough to fit our family, which it would. We have 2 daughters that are 9 and 6, and so I booked one of those. And as availability kind of shifted around and I thought about it more, we were spending 7 nights at this resort. This is different than going to Walt Disney World, where you're spending most of your days at the parks. We're going to be spending a decent amount of time in the room. So I priced it out and decided that we were going to splurge for a 1-bedroom villa. I'm not going to underplay it. There's a significant difference in price. However, this is one of those situations where we are not likely going to be going to Aulani every year. I actually met a lot of DVC members that do just that, but I know with points and with their setup, it's very different. So the thought was we are going to make this a comfortable experience and really go for kind of, I hate to say once in a lifetime, but not your annual trip is the way that I would describe it. So we were able to get a 30% discount, which I did notice that's fairly common. If you look at the Disney website, which is at disneyaulani.com, the 30% discount, like when we went, it was for the winter time, and then immediately there's going to be another one in the spring. So I think that's pretty common. There were other discounts that seem to spring up. Some involve you can get a slightly higher discount if you go to a DVC timeshare presentation. There's other deals here and there that come, but I think typically if you're able to at least get 30%, you're doing fairly well. I mean, it's a significant amount of money when you're talking about the rack rates of the rooms. So we booked that and then switched it, and I have to compliment I haven't had a great experience always when calling Disney, but all the Aulani representatives when we called were awesome. They were able to switch things. Sometimes things were available that were not listed on the website. So in a case where you see nothing or not the room you like, I would always call because you'd be surprised what could be available. So our room was in place. We thought, great, we've got this down. Then I went to book airfare. I expected that airfare would be expensive. It's Hawaii. We're also flying from St. Louis, which there are no direct flights from St. Louis to Honolulu. That's pretty common with a lot of cities in the United States, beyond some really large ones or ones on the West Coast. So you kind of have different options you can do. You can obviously fly into LA or Dallas or Phoenix or Seattle. There's different ways you can go. You can split up the airlines because Hawaiian Airlines is a very well-regarded airline with very high marks for service. That might be worth doing. It was not something we strongly considered because when you're flying with 2 kids, we thought 1 day of flying over 2 flights would be the best approach. So that narrowed it down considerably. Also, something to note is now Southwest Airlines has started doing flights to Hawaii. That was rumored for a while, but when I was booking this near the end of last year, that was not a possibility. Right there, you may find a better deal going with Southwest, and if not, it also may bring down the prices of the other vendors. Pretty much my only options were Delta and American. Obviously, I could have flown Southwest to a West Coast city and then taken Hawaiian or one of the other airlines. I tried to keep it simple. We ended up choosing American Airlines, which was slightly cheaper than Delta, $100 or $200 per ticket. But I'll say the time we were flying, I ended up getting a fare that was just over $800 per person, but the tickets were often over $1,000 when I was looking. And I had a Google Flights alert set, and it notified me when they went down. They actually had gone down to 7 something. By the time I went to book it, about 10 minutes later, they'd gone back up over 800. Within a half hour of that time, they were back to almost 1,000. All I can recommend is, you can read up on when's the best time, but it's really about being diligent, setting up all the flight alerts, and then just kind of going in with an understanding of what you're willing to pay. It can often cost more to fly to Hawaii than it can to Europe. Part of that is just, it's a long flight. The flight from St. Louis, we flew St. Louis to Phoenix, which was 3 hours, 40 minutes, then Phoenix to Honolulu, which was about 6:40. Both of the flights actually arrived early, but that was the set time. Flight back, we flew overnight to Dallas. But you see, so you're adding that up. You're over 10 hours of flight time, plus we had several hours of a layover. It's also, there aren't that many routes, so that's more exclusive. All of our flights we took were full, completely full, basically. So that shows the demand that is there, so the airlines can charge a decent amount. Now, some other times of season, you could find tickets that are maybe $500 or $600. And I'm sure there are times during the summer when it might even be higher. I just want to give you kind of a gauge on really just how high the price might be, especially if you're a family. You kind of do the math and just find the best deal you can. One other thing with the pre-planning, I know many of you often go to Walt Disney World and you're used to the ADRs where you have to book 6 months out, FastPass Plus, etc. It's not really that extensive with Aulani. They have 2 signature restaurants, Ama Ama and Makahiki, which I would recommend booking a reservation in advance. However, we had 2 meals at Makahiki. I booked them both a few weeks before our trip. There was availability at both of them while we were there. Now, I wouldn't count on it, though. That's the thing. We booked a dinner early in the evening. There was a lot of availability. We added in the breakfast at Makahiki. I'll talk about both these meals later. Just about a week out, and there was very limited availability. We had a late morning breakfast. If you want to be very specific in terms of your times, I would book earlier, but I don't think you have to book nearly as far. You're looking maybe a month or 2 out. They do not charge a penalty. They don't need a credit card for it. So there's less concern there, though obviously I would be respectful and not just book a bunch of different reservations. So that's something where you don't really need to go as far in advance. Now, another thing that my wife did experience is the Lanawai, a Disney spa, and we wanted to book that in advance. We wanted to make sure that she was able to go there. And the crazy thing is, we called and they basically said you could do 8, you could do 9, you could do 10, and we called like 5 days before we left. So I'm not sure we needed to, but again, it's kind of the same situation where I would say if there's a day where you want to do the spa, which I'll have more on this later, but is supposed to be really cool, don't need to book it super far in advance. Mainly just pick the day that you think works best. And I would just get it in place, and you can always change it up to basically the day before. And then the last thing, probably the most important thing to reserve in advance, I would say, is the Maka'ala Lobby, because that is something that I feel if you're going to go to Aulani, it is totally worth doing. And they do have limited availability, especially if you want VIP tickets for that, which give you the best seating and complimentary drinks. I think you should book that in advance. We just did the general tickets for the luau, so we were able to book, I think it was about a month or 2 out. If you want, the VIP tickets were already gone when we booked for one of the dates. So in that particular case, they don't do the luau every night. I would think once you're certain of what days you are going to go, I would go ahead and book that if you're interested, because it is a situation where it will fill up, and I would hate for you to miss that, which it's right on site there. It's easy to get to, and it's a pretty amazing experience. So I've been to Hawaii one other time. It was in 1994 when I was 18 years old with my parents and grandparents. A very different kind of trip. Still a lot of fun. And I mention that because when we flew there, we had one movie on the flight from St. Louis to Honolulu, then it used to be nonstop, and one movie back. And our choices were My Father the Hero, starring Gerard Depardieu, and Monkey Trouble, starring a girl and a monkey. That's what they had. Basically, I have this thought of, you open up the magazine and hope that your flight has the good movie, and it never happened. And I mention that because especially if you have kids, you may be very concerned about the long flight. And it is a long flight. However, you have a very good friend, and that is the screens on the back of the seats, which we had from Phoenix to Honolulu, and then from Honolulu to Dallas. They have tons of movies, TV shows, games, lots of stuff for kids. And while normally I would not say, hey, let your kids play on screens for hours and hours, on a long flight, it is your friend. So there's several different ways to get from the airport to Aulani. You can obviously rent a car, which if you're going to be doing a lot of driving around the island, it could make sense. However, Aulani charges $37 a day for parking if you're not a DVC member. And if you're there 7 days, you can do the math. That's a lot of money. You also have the option you can rent a car on site, maybe for a day or two. If you're just planning to see a few sites, I would definitely go that route. Aulani also has their own shuttle, the Hele Hele shuttle. That's $24 a person, which doesn't sound too bad from the airport. But for us, I looked into it and thought about it and said, that's about $100 each way. And it's probably going to be slow. If you think about it, Magical Express at Walt Disney World is slow. But obviously the fact that you're not paying money and then you don't have to lug your bags, you make that trade-off. Here, I didn't want to do that. We were arriving about 3:30 in the afternoon. I did not want to fight rush hour traffic. I wanted to get as quickly as I could to Aulani. So there's another really good option that I cannot recommend highly enough, and that's Charlie's Taxi Service, which is what we ended up using. They charge a flat rate of $55 from the airport directly to Aulani. They work with Aulani. Aulani lists them on their website. And then when you're there and you're going back, you can do the same thing for $55 once again. And you reserve it for the trip there. But if you're going back during the day, those taxis are at Aulani all the time. You can basically, it gives you a little flexibility, unlike with Magical Express when it says you got to leave 3 or 4 hours in advance at this time. You can kind of figure out how your day's going and then get a taxi at that point. My drivers were both great. You tip, yes, you need to add on tip. But the taxes in Hawaii are very low, about 4%. So it ends up being with tax only about $57. If you think about it in terms of 4 people, that's a steal. Both ways we went, the meters were listing $70 to $80 in the taxi, but it didn't matter because you agree to the flat rate up front. You don't have to pay that, especially if you're going during a time with a lot of traffic. This could save you easy $20, $30, $40 on a taxi ride. They were very professional. Charlie's Taxi's been around for more than 80 years. This is not a shady service. They were great both ways, and they made our experience going there, and especially coming back, just to be super pleasant. Well, as we got closer to Aulani, I could see the triangular buildings standing in the distance, and that's where it started to hit me. We are actually going here. This is not something that I even thought was possible, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, Hawaii is a gorgeous place. You don't need to go to Aulani to recognize the beauty of Hawaii. But as we pulled up, and especially as you walk into the lobby, it's breathtaking. It's something, I mean, I love the Jumbo House lobby, and I think this has some connections with that. But this is even more spectacular because you have the open air. You walk in, and it's open air towards the back, looking out over the resort. Basically, the roof is shaped like a traditional Hawaiian canoe. And that comes right from the mouth of Joe Rohde, who was a designer of Aulani. When I look around and I see connections to the animal kingdom and to areas that I love, it totally fits that Joe Rohde was involved with the design of Aulani. His little touches and the way that he puts together things in theme parks, you can look no further than Pandora, A World of Avatar, where he could take something that might seem pretty basic and make it spectacular. There's so much to see in this lobby. There's music playing from the Aulani soundtrack, which I highly recommend. You can buy digitally. It's 5 songs. It's worth hearing just for great music beyond just if you've gone to Aulani. I mean, the resort opened in August 2011, and it feels super new, even newer than some of the more recent resorts I've been at Disney World. Everything seems like it's just been there, yet also has a classic feel. They're actually getting ready to do pretty extensive overhauls to the pool area and some other sections of Aulani that is going to likely make it even look more spectacular. Before I get in a little further about the music in the lobby, I'm going to play for you this clip from episode 55, which was my conversation with composer Mark Mancina, who's written music for Moana, Tarzan, The Lion King, so much more. Mark worked with Kaylee Rochelle, a Hawaiian musician, to put together the background music for Aulani. And he's going to tell you a little more about it and the setup for that first approach that you take when you enter the lobby. Here's Mark. You mentioned that music from Aulani, which is great.
Aulani, yeah, right.
I haven't been there yet, but I've heard the music. And how did you get involved working on that?
Again, Chris Montan called me and said, I've got this really weird project where you would get together with this Hawaiian singer and create songs together. And then the songs would play in a resort. And the way that they did it with the speaker system is you hear instrumentally the music outside. As you come in, you start to hear the vocals. And so it was just a strange project. And it ended up being really fun. I got to work with Keali'i, and that was amazing. And we did some great recording together, and we wrote together. And again, it was kind of a meeting of two people that probably would never have worked together, but ended up okay.
So I want to talk a little more about the lobby, which is called the Maka'ala Lobby. This comes from an interview with Joe Rohde, and here's a quick quote of how he describes the lobby and what it's trying to accomplish. It's a warm and welcoming place that expresses the spirit of aloha, acceptance, and inclusion, but also announces that this place where you have arrived, Hawaii, is a special, unique, and important place, and that there are stories to be learned here that you may not know, and lots of them. Lastly, it also suggests a feeling of elegance and artistry which is consistent with true Hawaiian culture. Joe knows what he's talking about. All of those things totally come across when you're walking through the lobby and the nearby areas of Aulani. Up on the walls, there are images of Native Hawaiians with lyrics from the main theme of Aulani. I could stare at it all day. There is so much to see there. There's a few spots to sit, but almost purposely so, there aren't a ton of places to hang out. I think because Disney really wants to maintain what Joe described as elegance and artistry. They don't want this to just be a way station where you come in and it's really loud and it's your typical kind of Disney lobby in a lot of cases. It says something that when you walk in, the main entrance, you don't see the front desk. My wife actually asked me, is there a front desk? Because we walked in and then headed out to the overlook and then went towards our room. It's kind of set aside in the corner. Also to kind of give you that relaxed feeling. I never felt hectic or bustled or anything when I was in this lobby. And as you head down the hallways, there's 2 long, narrow hallways, and then you can look above, and they both lead to an image, again, of the people of Hawaii. There's several shops in the lobby. The shops are fine. I don't want to oversell. If you're someone who really likes to shop and buy lots of souvenirs, there are some things unique to the resort, which is really cool. One of them is your kind of more standard Disney shop with a lot of plush and a little bit of food and then a few gifts. And the other one is a little more high end with some beauty products and clothes and things like that. Both of them are nice to look through, but not something you're going to lose yourself in for hours and hours. And again, it's pretty subtle. My wife described Aulani on the whole as subtle Disney. And that totally fits for me because there are characters here, which I'll talk about later. You have activities, lots of Disney touches. Even the music in the background really feels like a Disney resort. But everything's a bit different. It's like Joe already said, there's stories we may not know. It's not just what you expect. It just feels different. It's this interesting mix of Hawaii and a luxury resort and Disney. And I know that sounds like marketing speak, but it all really comes together to deliver pretty much the most amazing resort I've ever stayed at. And while I haven't been everywhere, I've stayed at a decent amount of places. There's something just, for a lack of a better word, magical about Aulani.
I am walking outside right now in Aulani. It's about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Gorgeous out here. I will say, if you ever make it out here, don't burn yourself out every day because the resort, it just comes to life at night. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that it's super energetic because actually most of the pools close, all the pools are closed by 8, and some of them, including the lazy river and the slides, close earlier. So it's not that it's such like a party atmosphere. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a little bit what it seems like the Animal Kingdom Lodge was for us at night, where you just kind of hang out, and while there's still kids and families and such, it's like super sedate, and the lighting is perfect, and you got sounds of waterfalls. I don't know if you can hear that right now in the background, but there's sound of waterfalls. There's music going on everywhere. There's bands playing at the Olelo room, usually a 1 or 2 piece band playing. That is a lot of fun to hear, and it bounces off the building so well in an interesting way. What ends up happening is it's just a really cool sound where you have someone playing on one end of the entire resort, and you can basically hear them at the other end, and it never seems too loud. You have these giant towers that are gorgeous, and it creates this good atmosphere where, I mentioned the lobby earlier, but basically you can hang out on the overlook right near the lobby and hear the music from down below, and you can just experience it all in such a good way. And it's just one of those things where it all comes together in such a cool fashion. And then, of course, I'm not even mentioning the fact that you have the beach down the way, where if you get out here during sunset, you can experience sunset on the beach with this just gorgeous overlook with almost no obstructions. Then you come back and it gets a little darker at night and everything's lit up, and you just have... It's just awesome. The trick is, especially when you travel with kids, do you have any energy left to enjoy the evening time? When kids get older, it's probably even better because then you can just chill, or even if you're just a couple or anyone else, it's really fun to just have a drink or eat a little bit of food and just sit outside and experience it. That's something that I would not overlook. There's so many different spots with music playing in the background and the whole thing. It's just a really cool experience. I'm currently, like I said, just walking over to actually get refills. One thing I will mention that as a tip, and I know this is a pretty standard tip, is to buy the resort mugs when you go to a Disney resort. This one I think is even more important than your typical Walt Disney World tip, because Disney World, you're often going to the parks. You're not spending that much time at the resort. So, about $20 that you spend on a mug, it could be worth it. But it's not the same as a case here, where you're going to be spending a lot more time at the resort. I mean, I don't know how many times I've filled these up. And the second thing is, we are not soda drinkers. And so a lot of times when you think about a Disney resort where they have the typical soda options, and I know you can also have coffee, but the big benefit here is they have these Coke Freestyle machines. And at the Ulu Cafe, which is like an extra bonus because they have things like Dasani sparkling water, or many, lemonades is not what, they're kind of sugary, but still, for my daughters, it's great. But you have things, the Dasani sparkling water, also the coffee is Kona coffee, which is really good. It's not the typical kind of coffee you'd have at Walt Disney World. It's much better, so you can get that and fill it up in the mugs, plus just get water and all the different types of sodas you could ever imagine. And you add all that up, and it's like, this is the best deal. Hawaii prices for drinks and food, it's not just Aulani, are insane. So the fact that you can go and fill this up, we're staying for a week. Even if you didn't stay this long, it's one of those tips that I couldn't recommend enough. Plus, there's some cool designs so that you can take them home. And there's not the RFID, so it's not a case like where you have to worry about how often am I filling this up or something. Or it's pretty awesome, and it's another tip that I would recommend if you're staying anytime at all. There's bound to be something that you'd like to drink, and you're going to avoid just buying bottles or having to, just get water or something. It really just is an easy way to make your trip better.
Now that you've heard about the atmosphere of Aulani, I'd like to talk a bit about the room itself. Like I mentioned earlier, we stayed in a one-bedroom villa. And while I might get a little nervous looking at our credit card bill, it was totally worth it. Given that we stayed 7 nights, the extra space for 4 of us was really essential in making it feel like more of a relaxing vacation. There technically is enough space in a studio for the 4 of us to sleep and, obviously get around. However, not having that space would have made a situation where we definitely felt cramped after a week at the resort. Let me tell you a little bit about the villa itself. It's set up similar, I believe, to a lot of villas that Disney has put together for their DVC resorts. You walk in and you immediately step right into the kitchen area, which has all of the typical appliances: stove, microwave, dishwasher, even a rice cooker, toaster, coffee maker. You get the gist. What I really like about this area is not only are there appliances, but there's a separate space where you can eat. So you don't find yourself like you typically would in hotel rooms, either eating on the bed or at the small little table. There's a separate area connected right near the counter where you can eat there and spread out more. Plus, of course, there is a couch which pulls out into a queen bed, but that could be used as a couch during the day and also give you a lot more space to lounge when you're back in the room. The one-bedroom villa then has a separate area with another bed, which is really important, I think, especially for families. It doesn't feel so much like you're on top of each other. So you have a separate TV, chest of drawers, the whole deal in that room. And it also, that connects to the bathroom where you have the spa tub connected directly to there and a sink, and then another door which separates from a shower and the toilet and the sink. There's only one bathroom in here, and that this is a case where I hate to be greedy. A second bathroom would have been really nice. Now, I know they do have that in the 2-bedroom villas, which have an entirely separate sleeping area beyond the living room and a second bathroom. In this particular case, we had plenty of space, and it felt really nice. Everything is well done in the rooms. They have little touches like a Mickey lamp. There's another one where when the lamp turns on, there's a little silhouette in it. There's also a really large balcony. It's a single balcony, but with 2 access points. This is another thing that's really nice because in the evening, you can step out of the balcony from the bedroom and not be interrupting everyone by stepping across the pull-out bed. Technically, this villa does hold 5 people. There's a little twin bed that basically pulls out from the entertainment center. So one person technically could be sleeping right there with essentially the TV and entertainment center right in your face. And while that's a nice touch to be able to have a 5th person, probably a child, I would assume. I don't see how any adult could fit on that. I don't imagine it would be super comfortable if that was the case. And you might even do better by putting 3 on the queen bed if they're fairly young kids. But it's a nice touch. I appreciate the fact that Disney is using the space very well. That is the case with this villa. The space is all used efficiently, but never packing furniture in. It still has room to breathe. The only complaint I would say about the room is that the toilet was really loud. It had so much pressure where it was a little jarring to flush it. Beyond that, I have no complaints. Another thing I really noticed too is that there must be some serious soundproofing between these rooms. You could barely hear anyone else in the resort on either side of us. And that has not been the case for me, even staying at nicer Disney World resorts, where the rooms seem to definitely be more on top of each other. This might be a situation where, because we stayed in a villa, which was near other villas, there was just a lot of space. So I'm not sure how that would be in the area with just hotel rooms. But in this case, it was quiet, relaxing, and for the most part, you felt pretty separate from everyone else. So I imagine a big question is, what about the pools? That's obviously top of mind for my girls, and has to be this case with a lot of guests to Aulani. The pools are great. The main pool is the one we actually spent the least time in, probably, is the Maka'ala Lobby pool, which is 8,200 square feet. It's pretty big, and it's not very deep. In fact, there were times where I wished it was a little deeper as I was on my knees in the middle of the pool. This is the one that a lot of the younger kids are going to stay in the most because it's large, they can stand, you don't feel like you're on top of everyone except for during the pool party. But in general, you have some space. It's also the loudest area. It's not going to be the spot you want to be near if you're looking for kind of a serene, relaxing, quiet area. You would want to be closer to the infinity pool or even near the beach to have that experience. The other pool that we spent more time at, actually, was the Kamaka Grotto, which is an infinity pool which allows you to overlook the beach. You have a view from there. It's one of those where, in general, it didn't seem as crowded. It has a little cave area. It's a little bit deeper, but still was okay for our kids. And there's a lot of chairs near that area. And it just offers a really nice view where you have the beach behind you, and it's a pretty area, and also didn't seem as nuts. Now, it's funny that you could be hearing this and thinking, my kids want to go where it's the craziest. Well, there's plenty of that for sure. There's a splash zone, which never seemed very packed because it's mostly for little kids, and the Menehune Bridge, which is a giant play structure that also I think would work well for kids, especially on the younger side. My oldest daughter's 9, and she lost interest there pretty quick. The big draw with the pools are the 2 water slides, which I experienced both of them multiple times, and they were a blast. The volcanic vertical is almost totally in the dark. That is a body slide where you're lying on your back or sitting up, and it moves pretty fast, but it also had the shorter line of the 2, if that's something you're considering, and it's a really fun slide and more advanced than some of the slides I've seen at some Disney resorts, where it packs a good punch for adults, but is not too crazy for kids at the same time. The other water slide is the Tubestone Curl, and this is the one where you're actually riding on a tube, essentially, either a 1-person or a 2-person tube. It does not go into the dark. This one actually has a few dips where the volcanic vertical kind of goes down at a steady pace in a circle. This one has a few dips that might surprise you if you're not expecting them, but both of my daughters were totally fine with it, and I saw kids even younger than my daughter who just turned 6 doing it and enjoying it. This is the one that often had a long line because it takes longer to obviously load the tubes, make sure everyone is all set, and move forward. So you would often see situations where the line would stretch down towards the entrance, and it could take you 20 minutes or something, if not longer. So we didn't ride this as often, but it's also equally fun. And that one drops you off in the other cool thing at Aulani, which is a very large lazy river, the Wakalohe Stream. It's just really fun, especially when it's not super crowded, to just float around. There's a lot of water features. The rock work is really cool, and it takes you basically all around the resort. We experience this quite often, and it's pretty lazy. It's definitely not one of those lazy rivers where you feel like it's kind of a mix of lazy rivers and rapids. This is on the lazy side. There were times when I had to push off the wall to keep moving, but it's crowded, but not nuts. I rarely had a case where I couldn't move. They seem to have a certain number of tubes around to help to stem that. And plus, a lot of people are still waiting in line for the slide. So essentially, it never gets too crazy. But that's a big draw. And if you go there, I suspect you will spend a decent amount of time in that lazy river. I also enjoy the fact that when you're walking around at night or early in the morning, even when it's not open, the lazy river is just an attractive spot. It's not ugly. It's something that adds to the atmosphere of the resort and makes it super fun. The other big place where I'm sure you will spend time is at the beach itself. It's located, the Maka'ala Lagoon is basically a small cove with multiple resorts connected to it. The Marriott and Four Seasons are both nearby, but Aulani has the middle spot, has all the chairs with umbrellas and such, and it's great. It's quiet and serene. There are waves, but they're not huge. The water is cold, but not super Pacific Ocean cold like you might expect. You can swim a little ways out in the cove and back. It's comfortable. It's basically a nice spot to be with kids where you don't have to be worried that something's going to happen, and they can still have fun. And you can take out for free, you can take out a bunch of beach toys. You can also take out boogie boards and just enjoy hanging out at the beach. The first day we were there, due to our jet lag, we actually woke up super early and got to the beach around 6 in the morning. And I highly recommend getting there early at least once. You get to see the sunrise over the water. It's empty, so you don't have that experience, which can happen around noon or so, where it gets kind of crowded. And you're really able to appreciate just how beautiful this area is without as many distractions or other people. And we did that on our first morning, and I'm so happy we did because we never got up that early again and did it. And that really started our trip off in the right way.
Hey, so I'm back in the lobby again, and just wanted to tell you about one other really cool thing they have here at Aulani, which is scavenger hunts, which are all basically themed around the menehune, which are magical creatures, probably not the best description, which are these little statues all over the resort that are just a nice added touch to the whole resort. The scavenger hunts, you basically go to the clubhouse and check out iPads, and then essentially there's one in the lobby, it takes about 30 minutes, and then 4 more that are each about a half hour each that you can do all around the grounds of the resort. And it's kind of similar to like the Phineas and Ferb experience or Kim Possible used to be at Epcot, for example, but much cooler. First of all, the one in the lobby is pretty basic, but basically it's just another way to get you to kind of look at all the small items in the lobby and to explore the resort more. But another thing about it is that things interact with you. And I mean, there's a picture in one of the shops that actually is a video screen that comes to life. One of the menehune statues gives you a special gift at the end. And you're all interacting, well, really just receiving video messages from Aunty, who is one of the 2 characters, Aunty and Uncle, that are part of this resort. And it's a lot of fun. And the one in the lobby is really just kind of a nice little indoor one to do. But then when you actually get out on the grounds, it's not particularly hard. You're not really being asked to solve complicated problems. It's good for kids. But essentially you walk around the grounds. It's done randomly, so you can even do them more than once if you really want to. But you're finding these little nooks and crannies, and things come to life. And they're not just like, oh, a little light goes on. There's things where pretty cool effects happen, and water shoots out, even on people on the lazy river, which we did. Things that seem kind of just like nice decor comes to life and gives you kind of a new experience. There's one where you go inside a cave, and there's like a little image of lava, and it all comes to life, and it looks like the whole thing is basically on fire. Another one, you stand on a grate and it shakes to kind of put the spirits to rest. There's just too many to even mention, and it's a great way, especially something to do at night. Like right now I'm walking and it's after 8, but a bit earlier in the evening, especially when sunset is early, like right now, when sunset at like 6:40, you do it at night, things light up, and it's just a really cool way to experience the resort. There's no sun issues. You're just enjoying it. So I can't recommend it enough, especially if you have kids. Like my daughter, who's 9, is perfect age for this. But even a bit older, and even if you're just adults, I think yes, it's done on the level for kids, but it's still worth doing because it's a lot of fun, and it kind of gets you moving around the resort and seeing things and going to parts that maybe you didn't experience. And so we had a great time doing all of them, and then you get some nice little cool trinkets at the very end too.
I wanted to mention a few more things about the Menehune Adventure Trail. One is that the outdoor experience, when we were there, didn't start until 3 p.m. It's really perfect to do when the sun is down. It's a bit dark. Everything's light up, so it looks better. And it also is kind of a relaxing way to end a busy day. The lobby one can be done earlier, so if you're looking to do something indoors earlier in the day, that is a possibility. I mentioned picking up the iPad, and that is picked up at the Pauhana Community Center, which is basically the place where activities occur. You can also take out Blu-rays of Disney movies, take out board games. It's not somewhere we spent a ton of time in, but especially if it rains or if you just don't want to be out in the sun that often, it does give you a lot of different things that you can do while you're there. I've often seen the question of how many days is the right amount for Aulani, and I feel like it's kind of a problematic question because anyone can have their own limit to how long they want to stay. Some people might say 4 nights. Definitely don't stay longer than that if you're not going to venture out. 5 nights, 6 nights. We stayed 7 nights, and I felt like that was the right amount of time for us. And we really didn't even do that many of the activities. We did what I felt like was the right amount for us with the ages of my daughters and what they were interested in doing. If you're not as much of a pool or beach person and prefer to spend more of your time doing activities, there are plenty of things to do. They have what's called the Daily Iwa, which every single day it's released the night before around 7 p.m. You also can find online previews of what's coming, usually for between 3 to 4 days and a week. Now, the online daily activity schedules will sometimes change, so I wouldn't totally trust them. The printouts that they have in the lobby every day is the way to go. I mention that because there are quite a lot of different things to do. You can start the day with yoga on the beach. There's exercises for people that want to stay in shape. You have cultural tours, both inside and outside of the structure. Twice we went to storytelling by the fire with Uncle, where he told traditional Hawaiian stories next to the fire right near the beach in a very cool setting, especially when we saw it right at sunset. They also show movies 2 nights a week. Our choices were Big Hero 6 and then Ralph Breaks the Internet. The next week they were going to be showing Tangled. It varies well. They're all going to be Disney movies that are generally pretty popular. I don't expect that if you go, your choices will be The Black Cauldron and The Black Hole. If it was, I'd be like, hey, this is great. I suspect they're going to be classic Disney films, possibly on the recent side. But regardless, it's a nice way to spend time on the Hawaii lawn. That's also where the luau takes place. We went to a few activities there, including one where my daughters learned how to surf on dry land, another one where they were teaching the hula, some fun ways to pass the time that are a little more laid back than going crazy in the pool. And you need that, especially when you're spending a week at a resort. You have to balance out the busier activities with the quieter ones. And one of the places to do that for kids is Auntie's Beach House, which my daughters were very, very excited to visit, especially my younger daughter. And it has a bit of a tricky reservation system. So here's some more info about that and some background on how to register for other activities.
All right, well, I'm once again walking down the path around the inner courtyard near the main lobby, and I want to talk a little bit about a few things that, as far as checking in for complimentary experiences, which I know there's a lot of information out there online. You can hear as I walk past it, I'm walking past some fountains and the lazy river. You may hear that in the background. There's a lot of information online about how to check in, both for complimentary experiences, like activities and various things, or for Auntie's Beach House, the kids club. Now, Auntie's Beach House is a tricky one because it's really popular. It's not that big. It has a lot of stuff that kids are going to want, probably 3 to 12. They do have premium experiences. They have several, one themed to Moana, one themed to Stitch, and those run about either between $60 and $70 a person, and they're about an hour and a half long. So that's something that might be interesting, and that does guarantee you access to the club. But the other way to do it is just you show up in the morning. But it's a little complicated because you first have to pre-register online. You may also be able to do it there, but that saves some time. And then show up and get magic bands, actually, for your kids. And I do appreciate that Disney does so much legwork in order to make sure that everything's above board and works well. So you come down and do that, and you typically want to show up a little bit before the 9:30 time. And then you have to line up before 9:30 in order to have your kids actually be dropped off. Now, they can be dropped off at any time during the day, but it often fills up. So that's not that easy to do. Yeah. So we did this morning, and it's kind of a theme that I'm probably over preparing and showing up early because, we showed up very early and pre-registered. Everything moved smoothly, and then lined up. As we had heard, you had to line up very early, about 15-20 minutes early, and we're one of the first few people. So I'm not sure how early you have to really do it, but it used to be it was even more complicated where they had certain themed complimentary experiences plus premium experiences. Now it's just kind of you can check in any time and drop off your kids. And I don't want to sell this just as a way for the parents to do what they want, which is part of it. We had a good time for a few hours. But it's also pretty fun for the kids. The theme of today was Marvel, and both of my daughters, who are 9 and 6, really enjoyed it, especially my daughter who's 6. So I think the real target age is probably that 4 to 7 range, I think is what would be really good for Auntie's Beach House. And I'm going to talk to her more about it and play that clip later in the podcast. I wanted to briefly mention the complimentary activities and how that works. We did an animation, which was pretty cool. They had us go through and draw Pua from Moana, and then we also painted a cell, and you could choose between Mickey or Minnie or Stitch. And it was about an hour long and did not cost anything extra, and just had to sign up that morning. So the trick is you can't reserve this online. It's not like a fast pass or anything. So you just have to show up before 8 a.m. and sign up. So again, I was overly diligent and showed up at 7:30 and was the first person in line. And this isn't just for this experience. It was for any experience during the day. There's also some paid experiences, including you can make t-shirts was one of them that's happening that day. And there's some others like painting. So there's some that are complimentary and some that are paid. And still, it's a pretty cool deal overall. And for us, I was way early. I probably didn't need to show up early at all. But it's something to think about. You don't want to just stroll in at the time at noon, when things are noon, and say, okay, I'm going to do it. They're likely going to be full. But you also probably don't need to show up, at least in most cases, a half hour in advance. They had recommended 20 minutes. I was overly diligent. But you probably want to show up around 8 a.m. and then sign up for whatever you want to do so you don't have to worry about it later and you're all set.
So I've been talking for almost an hour and given my perspective of what it was like to go to Aulani. And it's important to hear from other people. What's it like for a 9-year-old to visit Hawaii for the first time and see this amazing resort? And especially, what's Auntie's Beach House like? I only had a small glimpse at it when I did a quick tour before I dropped them off. So now I'm going to play this interview I did with my daughter, Elise. We talked about what were her favorite things on the trip and got the inside scoop about Auntie's beach house. So here's Elise. I am here for the second time on the podcast with my daughter Elise, who first talked about Marceline last fall. Elise, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, Dan.
Elise, you were with me. We went to Aulani together.
Awesome!
Yes, it was awesome. So, what did you think of Aulani? What were your overall thoughts of the place?
I thought it was really nice. It's a good alternative if you still want to see Disney magic, but you don't want to, go to like a theme park. It's also nice because it's a resort. You can just calm down. There's no waiting in line barely for anything.
Definitely, and that was one of the draws for us when we decided to go there. So, what would you say were your favorite things that you did during our week at Aulani?
One of the things was being able to see some of the characters without a wait. They're just characters around who are there, and there's no wait.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was really impressed by that part of it. So what else did you like doing? Did you enjoy the pools and the beach? What else were the fun things for you?
I enjoyed the beach and how you could just watch the sunset. I enjoyed Uncle's storytelling. Uncle does storytellings 4 times in certain days.
Yeah, that was really cool. We watched that a few times where Uncle was by the fire and magically blew out the fire at the end.
The remote.
Well, that is not confirmed that he was using a remote. I'd like to think it was the magic of Hawaii.
In his pocket.
Yeah, he did kind of inch off to the side, but I think he might have had something else that he used to turn off that fire. So one thing you did while you were at Aulani is you spent one morning where you were at Auntie's Beach House, the kids club. So how was that?
Auntie's Beach House was really quite a nice place. I saw most of the kids were having good times. Also, there's certain themes of the day, I went to a Marvel theme.
So what did they do for Marvel to make that the theme of the day?
So they just had certain activities and crafts on that, and I think they might have had things you could sign up for.
So what did you do when you were at Auntie's Beach House?
Well, there was a good amount of things to do there. They always have movie streaming. They have a room with video games, and it's really fair because they have timers, for how long you're supposed to be on them. They let everyone have a turn and everything. It was just really nice to be around there.
Were the people that worked there, were they really nice to all the kids?
Yeah, they were really nice, and if you wanted to go home whenever you want, you could just say, hey, I'm going to go home. You didn't have to wait. Also, it's just a really nice place in there.
Was there enough for you to keep you busy while you were there? You were just there for a few hours, but did you have plenty of things to do?
Well, I'd say I barely had enough stuff to do, but I'd say for all young kids would have enough stuff to do. Because there's movies, games, costumes, dress up, scenarios. Sometimes they have activities.
Right. So what do you think is you mentioned younger kids. What's the perfect age? I mean, because you're 9, you're almost 10. What's the perfect age for somebody to go to Auntie's Beach House?
Well, I'd say not really a toddler, but maybe just 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe an 8-year-old.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because your sister Etta, she's 6, and I think she could have gone there for a long time. She was having a great time.
Yeah, most of the kids looked really happy. They could stay there for the whole vacation.
Yeah, we weren't going to do that to you guys because obviously we wanted to have fun. So what did you think about the water slides and how was that?
The first one with the rafts, it was really nice. I don't recommend carrying a bunch of stuff with you though, because it turns to the side. The other one, anyone could go on, even people who get motion sickness. It's you just sit and then you're in the water.
Yeah, it's mostly in the dark and there aren't any big hills. So for the whole experience of being at Aulani, seeing the beach and Hawaii and the resort, what would you rate that out of 10? The whole experience, everything you did, we did while we were there.
8.7.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. So was there anything about Aulani that wasn't your favorite thing?
Well, the rentals closed at 5, so you couldn't get it after. Most of the shops were really good, but some of the things were kind of expensive.
Yeah, that's one thing about Aulani, and I did notice that some, even like the Lazy River closed at 5 o'clock, so you couldn't really do that at night. So I know you mentioned the shops. Did you get anything good when you were shopping?
Well, there was a bunch of exclusive Aulani merchandise you probably can't get anywhere. I found out that they have Tsum Tsums and with Aulani stuff on them. They have like stuffed animals and all that are personalized to Aulani, where you probably can't get anywhere else besides the internet. Also, is really nice that the beach was open to the public. If you just end up in Hawaii for some reason, you could just go to the beach.
Yeah, that is a good tip. Whereas if you just want to see what Aulani's like, you can either go there and you can park, and if you eat at one of the restaurants, you can park for a few hours for free. And you don't have to do that. You can just go to the beaches open. So that's a great tip, Lise. Any other tips?
Pack kind of light. I mean, like, don't pack, like, beach toys and rafts and all that. They provide that, like, you can rent. Oh, and there's a lot of good stuff to sign up, like classes and parties and hula things. And make sure to check out some of their shows, like a luau.
Yeah, so that was really fun for you, the luau?
Yeah. Also, the Makahiki breakfast is really good, too, because they had a lot of stuff.
I had a lot of fun at Makahiki at that breakfast. That was really cool. Part of that, they had a show at dinner and at breakfast. So what do you think about that show?
I thought it's great for younger kids. It's interactive. You can get up and, like, dance and shake stuff. And there was a story behind it. Aunty runs the morning one. Not to be concerning if Uncle's listening. Aunty is a little bit more child-friendly, because Uncle's just like, hey, let's get up. Let's shake this banana.
Yeah, I like the Auntie's breakfast show better than Uncle's. It might have been we had a better view, but she just seemed to be a little better than the Uncle that we had for that dinner. So I'm right with you on that one. So anything else you want to mention, Lise?
One last tip. Bring your kids.
Well, we never considered not bringing you guys, so it was obviously fun to have you around and hang out with you. So, Elise, it's also been really fun to have you on this podcast. Thanks again for being on the show and giving your thoughts on Aulani.
You're welcome. I hope to be on a future podcast.
We'll definitely have you back another time to talk about more things that we're doing from a kid's perspective. So, thanks a lot, Elise. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this trip report from our vacation to Aulani, a Disney resort and spa. And this is just part one. Next week on part two, I will dig into all the dining options at Aulani and beyond, the amazing chances to meet Disney characters at the resort, our experience at the luau on site at Aulani, and the Lanawai Spa there, plus my overall feelings about the trip and my first experience at Aulani. There's definitely going to be more Aulani content over at tomorrowsociety.com in the future. You can also stay up to date with what I'm doing on Twitter at TomorrowSOC or Facebook or Instagram at Tomorrow Society. I would love to hear what you think of this podcast. You can email me, Dan at tomorrowsociety.com, with any thoughts and questions. Don't forget to go to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It really helps the show to continue to grow and find more great listeners like you. You can also become an official member of the Tomorrow Society and help out this listener-supported podcast at patreon.com/Tomorrow Society. The Tomorrow Society podcast is hosted, produced, and edited by Dan Heaton. The music is written by Adam Hookey and performed by the Sophisticated Babies. Thanks so much for listening to this Aulani trip report, and I will talk to you again next week.